Welcome back to another monthly book review. And you might notice my background's a little different. I've changed apartments. I've moved out to a quiet town, about 45 minutes by train outside of Paris, maybe an hour and a half by car. So I've got room to have all of my books in one space, and you can see them behind. I might talk about them in a future video. But for now, the monthly book review is 3 Cups of Deceit by Jon Krakauer. And I first got into Jon Krakauer because of Into Thin Air. And I think that book is important to me in many ways. I have a lot of love for that adventure survival genre, both in the fiction sense, say Robinson Crusoe, and the nonfiction sense, something like Into Thin Air or On the Edge of the World, The Endurance, featuring Shackleton by Caroline Alexander. What I think was surprising to me about this book is, as you can see, it's very thin. And the 3 Cups of Deceit sounded to me like another book that I'd heard about, which it turns out is 3 Cups of Tea. And the book is essentially an expose of Greg Mortensen, the founder of the Central Asia Institute, and also the alleged author of 3 Cups of Tea, although it was ghostwritten, as was his other book. And again, there's nothing wrong with ghostwriting. I've done a bit of ghostwriting in my own time. But there's one thing to have a ghostwriter. It's another thing to have your ghostwriter tell lies. And it seems that in neither of these circumstances did the ghostwriters know that they were telling lies, because Greg Mortensen kept those lies to himself. Whenever I review books, I have my own strong feelings generally about the work. I don't tend to read reviews ahead of time before I write my own review, but I was just curious as to what people thought before I was about to put my review into Goodreads, and I saw a lot of polarization in the reviews, and it was surprising to see quite a lot of pushback at Krakauer, which was surprising to me. One of the ones was Krakauer was mad about having the money. So Krakauer donated something close to $75,000 of his own money towards the Central Asia Institute because he was really impressed by Greg Mortensen, read his story, that sort of thing. And so people thought, okay, Krakauer's mad, and so he wrote this book. So I need to just say, the only person who would say something like that is someone who doesn't write for a living. So those of us who do write for a living, we don't just spend time writing angry books for no money, by the way. All 100% of the proceeds of this book went to a project called Stop Girl Trafficking. So you don't get mad at somebody and then write a revenge book and then donate the proceeds to charity. Krakauer spent more than a year on this book. So anybody who writes for a living knows that we don't have time or money to just write revenge books because we're mad at somebody. So anyone who says that Krakauer was just mad and he wrote this book, obviously he was mad. But he was mad about the lies. Partially, anyone's going to be upset, no matter what $75,000 represents of your own personal fortune. Anyone's going to be mad about that, but he's mad about lies. And Krakauer gets obsessed about telling the truth in subjects that he writes about, whether that's Into the Wild, his book Missoula, or this one, 3 Cups of Deceit, Into Thin Air. He's trying to tell a true story. Anyone who would accuse Krakauer of just vendetta writing isn't familiar with Krakauer's body of work. Krakauer's body of work does not support such an idea. He does get obsessed about his subjects. That is true. So I'm willing to say that he's obsessed about Greg Mortensen. But being obsessed about somebody doesn't mean that you're wrong. So the second point that I have in response to some of these reviews, the first point being Krakauer's mad and he wrote this book in revenge and he's just obsessed with Greg Mortensen. I agree that, yes, he was obsessed with Greg Mortensen, but you don't write a book just because you're mad. You write a book because you're mad and because you're seeking the truth. Krakauer has proved that across his body of work. Second, and I think far more important, nothing in this book has been refuted. Greg Mortensen has had years to refute the allegations in this book. And look at it, it's 100 pages. He found time to ghostwrite, or found time to write. He essentially had them ghostwritten, but he found time to write 2 300-page books, but he doesn't have time to refute one 100-page, essentially, pamphlet. For me, the silence is what's damning. If someone attacked me, my books, essentially my board, my life's work, and I said nothing, it would prove, and we have under the law, silence is consent. So the fact that he never said anything about it to this day, and all he did was quietly step down from the Central Asia Institute's board and never wrote a book again, says everything that needs to be said. If what Krakauer has managed to put together, and 60 Minutes with a corresponding piece has managed to put together, is wrong, let Greg refute them. I'm happy to read whatever Mortensen, if it's not ghostwritten at least, I'm happy to read anything that he has to say that would refute this. But the first edition of this book, I think, came out in 2011. Yes, 2011. And then the second edition came out in 2014. So that's the second point, is the book's never been refuted. And that's why I think it's really powerful. Thirdly, some people in the review said, well, some good was done. Some kids learned how to read. Some girls got educated. Sure, that's fine. But at what cost? And now that legacy is being threatened because there was never a reckoning at the Central Asia Institute. They never denounced their founder and moved forward. In the same way, I will say that the Live Strong Foundation did what they had to do with Lance Armstrong. They threw him overboard. They said, we don't condone any of this. And that foundation, I think, has moved on to do bigger and better things without him. And Armstrong famously denounced them as they threw him off, even though later on he had to admit he was lying. And the same sort of thing could have been done by the Central Asia Institute. They could have thrown Greg overboard, said that he's a liar, we don't have anything to do with him. Thank you for getting this started, but we can't build a legacy on lies. And as a result, their legacy still lives on lies. Their donations have continued to crater since the exposés on 60 Minutes and by Krakauer. And whatever good may have been done in the past is being threatened because of this reckoning. And it's more proof that you can't build anything good on the foundation of something rotten, and then go back and try to justify the good. Finally, unbelievably, in the reviews, some people said, oh, well, I assume that people are making up stories. I assume that 3 Cups of Tea wasn't entirely true. Except it's in the nonfiction section, and it's being pushed to kids as part of a curriculum for their schools. So it's not being told to them that there's creative license being taken. Large parts of the book were fabrications. It's being sold by Penguin in the nonfiction section. And there's no disclaimers that any of this is untrue, despite the fact that numerous people have come out and said Mortensen was simply lying about this. So, in summary, 3 Cups of Deceit, it's a distressing but necessary read. For those of you who need heroes to worship or don't like disrupted narratives, this isn't for you. But I spend a fair amount of time reading about con artists and their cons. Enron and Jeffrey Skilling, Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes, WeWork and Adam Newman, Fire and Billy McFarlane. I shouldn't be that surprised that there needed to be an expose done in the nonprofit sector, but that's what this book is. It's an expose of a con artist and his con in the nonprofit sector. It's unfortunate, but it's necessary because it's not good for us to hold on to illusions about heroes and narratives when they're totally false, and they've been demonstratively proven to be so. I appreciate Krakauer coming out, taking his own time out of his own life, out of his own writing schedule to write something like this, to inform people about Greg Mortensen, the CIA, and the CIA too, the CAI and its lies. Anyway, I'll be back with another book review next month.